Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to cut through the noise, analyze the sources, and give you the crucial insights instantly. Today, we're diving into something, well, pretty defining for modern geopolitics. It's how quickly physical disputes, like border fights, just instantly spill over into cyberspace. And the chaos, the risk that creates. It can actually far outweigh the physical conflict itself. We're focusing on a specific flashpoint. Thailand and Cambodia back in July and August of 2025. It's really a perfect, if kind of terrifying, example of how nationalistic feelings can ignite immediate, damaging digital warfare, often driven by proxy forces and often mixed up with a lot of deception.
Exactly. We've been digging into a pretty detailed threat intelligence report from that time, and we've layered in the regional policy context, too. So the
Yeah.
mission for you listening in isn't just to grasp the mechanics of these cyber clashes. It's really to see the deep instability this mix creates, real damage blended with outright fraud, especially for a region trying so hard to build digital trust.
Okay, let's set the scene first. The physical side. What actually triggered this in late July 2025? Well, reports were coming in about intense border fighting, Thai and Cambodian forces, focused in Thailand's provinces like Sisakat, Surin, Buram, and Trat. We're talking continual reports of explosions, gunfire, pretty serious stuff. Serious enough that martial law was actually declared down in Trat province.
And yeah, this wasn't just random skirmishing. It tapped into some really deep-seated historical issues, specifically Cambodia's claim over Koh Kood. That's
Yeah.
an island currently controlled by Thailand, very near Koh Chang, a big tourist spot.
Yeah.
So when you get military clashes mixed with these potent national symbols, the digital reaction is, well, instantaneous
Yeah.
and very aggressive.
Right. And what makes this case stand out, I think, is the timing. Because this whole flare-up happened shortly after these major regional talks aimed at securing the very digital space these attacks were hitting.
Exactly. Just a few months before, in January 2025, the 5th ASEAN Digital Ministers meeting, ADGMAN, had wrapped up right there in Bangkok.
And what came out of that meeting? What were they trying to achieve?
Well, the goals were ambitious, and they felt urgent. Leaders like Malaysia's Minister in Digital, Gopin Singhdeo, were really stressing this critical need. The need for ASEAN to develop and deploy consistent digital and cybersecurity standards across the board, fast. A big driver was building trust, a trusted digital environment,
Yeah.
especially for tricky new areas like artificial intelligence governance.
And the money involved really highlights why this security, this trust, is so vital. ASEAN's aiming to more than double its digital economy. They're shooting for, what, $2 trillion by 2030?
Staggering number.
Yeah, and that goal, it completely depends on things like regional systems working together, stability, mutual trust, all the things that get blown up the second a border dispute turns into a digital free-for-all like this.
Absolutely. And to try and protect that $2 trillion ambition, Malaysia took the lead on some key projects at ADGMI in 2025. They announced the ASEAN AI Safety Network, focusing on deploying AI safely across the region. And crucially, they also agreed to spearhead the development of the ASEAN Cybersecurity Cooperation Strategy for 2026 to 2030, which is, a long-term plan specifically meant to build a resilient, secure cyberspace.
So you have leaders talking about AI safety networks, complex 5-year strategies, and then just weeks later, practically, they're dealing with like low-level groups using old password lists to try and crash government websites. That gap between the high-level plans and the immediate digital reality, that feels like the real story here.
It really does. It just shows how fragile the whole digital setup is when national tensions spike.
Okay, before we get into who these digital combatants actually were, let's pause for a moment to thank our sponsor. This deep dive is brought to you by www.cisomarketplace.com. Look, if you're trying to simplify your security strategy, maybe cut through the sales noise and connect directly with leading cybersecurity vendors. Check them out. That's www.cisomarketplace.com. Think of it as your shortcut to building a more resilient defense, which, as we're about to see, is absolutely crucial when conflicts like this just erupt out of nowhere. All right, let's unpack this digital side then. The shooting might have paused, but the digital proxy war just ramped up. And we're not talking sophisticated state-sponsored spies here, right? We're mostly talking hacktivists.
Primarily, yes. Group IB, the source we're drawing on, tracked an incredible 19 active hacktivist groups just in that intense 2-week window, July 24th to August 7th.
19 groups in 2 weeks. Wow. Was it balanced?
Slightly tipped, actually. They found 11 groups identified as pro-Cambodia and 8 as pro-Thailand. But here's the really critical part. 14 of those 19 groups basically popped up after the broader tension started rising back in May 2025.
Ah, So they weren't lying dormant. They formed in response.
Exactly. It shows just how fast nationalist feelings, once sparked by military action, can mobilize an almost instant army of digital volunteers. Or digital militia, perhaps.
And how should we think about these actors? The report called them what?
Largely opportunistic and unsophisticated. That's the key phrase. They weren't deploying 0 days or complex malware. Mostly they relied on pretty basic stuff.
Like DDoS attacks?
DDoS, yeah. Distributed denial of service, and simple website defacements, changing the homepage. The main goal wasn't deep data theft generally. It was about getting noticed, causing disruption, maximum visibility.
So just to be clear, define patriotic hacker in this context.
Right. In this scenario, it's someone carrying out malicious digital acts, basically on behalf of their country, using readily available tools, often low-cost ones. And crucially, they could be acting with or without any kind of nod from their actual government.
Self-motivated.
Self-motivated, yeah.
Yeah.
Driven by nationalism, patriotism, offering their digital skills, such as they are, as this kind of independent force.
And the numbers really show how effective these simpler methods can be for making noise. DDoS attacks alone were, about 31% of all the incidents they tracked?
That's right, 109 separate DDoS incidents in just that 2-week period.
It really is like the digital version of just shouting slogans outside someone's building. Annoying, disruptive, visible.
Precisely. And when you look at who they were targeting, well, logically, both sides went after government and military sides first. That makes sense. But it spilled over really quickly. In Thailand, they saw sustained attacks on education and healthcare websites, hitting essential civilian services.
Okay. And Cambodia.
For Cambodia, the targeting also specifically included financial services, trying to chip away at public confidence in the economy, perhaps.
Okay, so the picture's mostly hacktivists using fairly basic tools. But officials on both sides started throwing around accusations involving big state players, right?
Oh, immediately. Thai officials were suggesting Cambodia was getting help from groups linked to North Korea. And Cambodian authorities fired back, accusing pro-Thai groups, like one called Black Eye Thai, of major intrusions.
But yes, if the evidence points to these opportunistic hacktivists, why jump straight to blaming North Korea? Is that just politics, trying to raise the stakes internationally?
You absolutely hit the nail on the head there. The critical finding from Group IAB was clear. They found no verifiable technical proof in the public domain to back up claims of nation-state groups being involved in this specific fight.
So it's political spin.
It looks very much like a political tactic. By mentioning powerful state actors, even without proof, you elevate what might be a minor border clash into something that looks like a major regional security crisis.
Right, weaponizing the idea of cyber warfare for diplomatic leverage.
Exactly. It confirms this was mainly a hacktivist-driven event, but one that was immediately spun into a larger political narrative.
Okay, so that sets the stage for the hacktivist landscape. But then things got, well, more interesting, potentially more damaging. Let's talk about the high-profile breach claims.
Right, this is where we move beyond just knocking websites offline and into claims of serious data theft and infiltration. Claims that, if true, could be really destabilizing.
So give us some examples. Where did it look like maybe the attackers were a bit more skilled, even if they weren't necessarily state-backed?
Well, one of the most striking claims came from a pro-Thailand group called CISO. They claimed they'd breached two pretty critical Cambodian government systems. One was the National Vehicle License Plate System.
Okay, that's sensitive data.
Very. They allege they exported over 3 million license plate records. Registration details, owner info, potentially. And to make it believable, they offered this very specific proof, a screenshot. It showed a 1993 Toyota Camry registered in Phnom Penh.
Wow, that detail makes it feel real. It makes the threat tangible to ordinary people.
Exactly. It's designed to make the public feel exposed, vulnerable. That's a serious breach of public trust, if true. What about critical infrastructure? Any claims there?
Yes, on the other side, a pro-Cambodian group, Cyber Kingdom KH, claimed a major hit against a prominent Thai company, one involved in airport management. Specifically, they said they got into an admin console for something called a TIBCO Spotfire server.
What does that mean in practical terms?
Well, the files they posted seemed to show configuration details, system logs, even network topology like the layout of the airport's digital network, routing paths for different systems. Now, if that network information was genuine and current, that's not just leaking data, that's potentially handing over a blueprint someone could use to disrupt or even shut down physical airport operations, travel, logistics.
Okay, that's a different level of threat entirely.
It is. And the financial sector wasn't immune either. Another pro-Cambodian group, Unknown SEC, claimed they'd snagged customer credit card information from a Thai financial institution.
So hitting government, infrastructure, finance, these claims seem almost perfectly designed to undermine that trust ASEAN is trying to build.
Precisely. Whether they were entirely true or not, the claims themselves sow chaos and doubt.
Which brings us neatly to the other side of this coin, the deception factor. Because in these chaotic situations, not everything is what it seems.
Exactly right. This kind of environment is absolutely ripe for fraud and exaggeration. Hacktivist groups are often battling for attention, for influence, as much as they are for actual impact. So you get this major problem of exaggerated claims.
And we saw some really blatant examples in this case, didn't we?
We did. There was one group, BL4CK CYB3R, claiming this huge government data leak. Sounds dramatic. But then it got exposed. Their post was basically a word-for-word copy of something an entirely different, unrelated actor called Kazu had posted earlier.
Plagiarism in the cybercrime world.
Essentially, yeah. And Kazu apparently called them out publicly. BL4CK CYB3R eventually had to admit on some dark web forum they were just trying to pull a scam, trying to get credibility or maybe sell fake data.
Okay, so that's outright fraud. What about just inflating the numbers?
Oh yeah, the classic exaggeration. We saw that with the Protai group, KH Nightmare. They claimed this absolutely massive leak, 800 gigabytes of data from 71 different Cambodian government organizations. Sounds devastating.
800 gigs is huge.
It is. But when analysts actually looked at the data dump, it turned out to be mostly old, recycled credentials. You know, URL login password list, ULP dumps, stuff that's probably been circulating for ages, likely bought cheap or scraped from previous unrelated breaches.
So old news dressed up as a fresh, critical breach.
Exactly. They took old, low-value data and massively exaggerated its size and significance to make a splash.
Okay. So we're dealing with this messy landscape, some real low-level disruption, some potentially serious claims targeting critical systems, and then outright scams and hype. If you're an organization caught in the middle of this, facing these opportunistic attackers, what's the practical defense strategy? Group IB had some advice, right?
They did. And it's quite pragmatic. It focuses on shoring up the basic weaknesses these groups tend to exploit. For DDoS, the big one, they recommend redundancy using multiple internet service providers so one getting hit doesn't take you offline. Also, using upstream filtering services to clean traffic before it even reaches you. And during active attacks, using features like geofencing.
Geofencing, blocking traffic from outside your expected geographic regions.
Right. If you're a Thai agency, maybe block IPs from outside Southeast Asia during a known attack wave. For website defacements, the advice is pretty standard cybersecurity hygiene. Keep your content management systems, your WordPress, your Drupal, keep them updated, patch vulnerabilities. And use a web application firewall, a WAF, to inspect traffic coming to your website and block common attack patterns.
Okay, but hang on. If many of these attackers are, as you said, unsophisticated, using basic scripts, maybe old passwords, do organizations really need to spend on things like multiple ISPs, fancy BUVFs, complex geofencing? Or is just doing the basics, good password policies, timely patching enough to stop, say, 90% of this stuff?
That's a really good question, and it highlights the challenge. For the high-value targets like that airport management company or critical government databases, yes, the answer is probably yes. They do need those robust layered defenses because the potential impact of a successful breach, even by a less sophisticated actor, is catastrophic. But for maybe the majority of targets, those education sites, smaller government agency pages, you're right. A lot of it comes down to fundamentals, especially against those data leak claims fueled by old credentials. What's the best defense? Monitoring for your own company's credentials, showing up in breach lists, and having strong enforced password policies, making sure people aren't reusing passwords, using multi-factor authentication. In this kind of messy, hacktivist-heavy environment, your internal digital hygiene is often just as important, if not more so, than your fancy perimeter walls.
So wrapping this deep dive up, it really paints a clear picture of modern conflict, doesn't it? Regional tensions don't just stay physical anymore. They instantly become digital warfare. And the key takeaway maybe isn't just that they use digital tools, but how. These proxy forces, these hacktivists, they weaponize disruption, sure, but also disinformation, fraud. It makes it incredibly hard to know what damage is real versus what's just noise or a scam. And that uncertainty, that erosion of trust, that feels like the real long-term risk here.
Absolutely. And the bigger picture here is that you have the ASEAN region trying to build this massive $2 trillion trusted digital future, while simultaneously fighting off these constant, low-level but very high-visibility digital brushfires tied to geopolitical spats. It just underscores why that long-term ASEAN cybersecurity cooperation strategy is so vital, but also why it faces such huge, immediate practical challenges on the ground.
Which leads us perfectly into our final provocative thought for you, the listener. Chew on. We know proxy forces like these are often used specifically because they offer plausible deniability to governments. So, in this world of escalating cyber tensions, how long can international law stay fuzzy on this? When does a so-called patriotic hacker's digital attack cross the line and become an actual act of war? What scale of disruption would it take? Would a successful, sustained attack knocking out, say, a nation's entire airport management system force the global community to finally draw a clear, unambiguous line in the sand? Something to think about.